Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm just going to be talking about Marathon Season 2. Now, just quickly before we get this out of the road, this is not a hate video. I'm not saying this to drag the game, and I'm not saying this to attack the game or the people who make it. I'm saying this because I love the game and I criticize the game because I care about it. I want the game to improve and I want it to be in a better state and I want it to succeed. That's the reality. And there will be things I'll talk about, and there are positives and negatives for the season. And I will talk about them. I'll explain what I think are positives and what I think are negatives. And ultimately, I do think this season as a net whole has been negative. I do think it has hurt a lot of the economy. I think it's damaged progression. I think it's deterred a lot of players because of bad matchmaking and rubber banding, desync issues, all that sort of stuff. And I do think there is a content dilemma. And I will explain this in a bit, and I'll talk about all this. But I thought I'd just get this out of the road before we get in, before somebody that comes in starts leaving marathon hate comments, or somebody starts abusing me for being a marathon hater. Because the marathon community at this point is a very, very weird place where we don't really take criticism very well because we don't know if it's a person attacking the game for the sake of attacking the game, or if it's a person just trying to make a point. So anyway, let's start off with the maps. So basically, there was one new map this season, and it was a reskin of an old map. Or at least that's what people want you to think. Now, Night Marsh is actually, yes, it is reskin of Die Marsh. However, it goes a bit deeper than just being a reskin, which is one of those things that kind of feels a bit disingenuous to say. Because the way it works is it completely reworks how you approach the game. It's not really so much a reskin of Die Marsh as it is a complete rework of how you interact the game. Because what it does is, first and foremost, much more limited vision. You cannot see without activating flashlights, which make you more visible. This mode puts an emphasis on stealth, and you want to be stealthy. You want to be able to hide, you want to be able to avoid people, you want to be able to just pick and choose your fights, and only get into fights when you know that there's no one else around. It's a really, really interesting mode, and it forces you to really think. It forces you to have to play in a different style to any of the other maps, really. And I actually like that. I really think that's cool. The only map I've actually played on that has the level of tension that this map has is honestly Cryo Archive. Like, that's the only other map that I can think of that has this level of tension where you're sneaking around, really not wanting to find enemy players, but it's really interesting. I think it's a really good map overall. I love how it's designed. I love how there's all this anomaly stuff going on, and I love the horror elements. I absolutely adore that. Like the ghosts, like there are so many moments where you're just like in this tense moment where you're trying to get around the map and you're trying to fight the enemies or find somebody, or you're getting hunted, and then you just see a ghost run past and you just absolutely just like shit yourself because it is scary sometimes. And there are just random jump scares around the map. I'm not going to spoil them for anyone because, like, if you're new to the game, I want you to get the full horror experience. But it is really exciting. I do like it. I think it's really fun. It's a really interesting take on the mode, and then it gets even better because there's a raid. Like, basically what happens is you collect these certs, right? You go around the map and you can use them to do different things. Primarily is activating the towers. Now, when you activate the towers, it takes you to a cache or something. In those caches, there's a chance of getting an observation labs key. But at the start of the season, most of us didn't know about that. So what we're doing is we're getting into Upper Complex, and then we realize, oh, there's a puzzle. So we do the puzzle. And then you take down these green doodads, and then you get into the observation labs area for the boss fight. And then you get in there, and it's like, where's the boss? And you can't spawn it because you need the key. And then people realize, oh wait, there's keys in the cache. So we take them up and now you can do the boss fight. And there's some really, really good loot. Really juicy loot. Unfortunately, this is where things kind of go off the rails because unfortunately it kind of broke progression for a bit and it did make things a lot more difficult. But it's not only this alone. But this sort of raid concept is really interesting, and I really like it because it means there's a lot of items, a lot of things to do, and it really forces you to reconsider how you approach the game. And there's also 2 new enemy types. Well, 3 if you count the Warden that they add to the Upper Complex, but I only really consider it as 2 because you're only going to realistically encounter 2 of them 90% of the time. These 2 are the Anomalous Husks and the Reverb Emitters. Reverb Emitters, if you're not aware, are slightly broken at the moment because what they do is they shoot these big seeking energy balls at you, which are really, really dangerous, and they can really mess you up if you're not careful. But the problem is, they don't really spawn too often. They're sort of really weird because you'll have some runs where you go like five runs in a row and you just won't get a single one, and then you'll spawn in. There's like just 7, just there for some reason. I don't know why, but that's how it is now, I guess. And they're pretty cool, actually. I do quite like them. I think they're interesting. I would like it if they dropped some stuff, like dropped some form of, let's say, valuable or something that is unique to them. But overall, I think they're pretty interesting. Second of all, you have the anomalous husks. These are basically screebs from Destiny 2. They run at you and then they explode. They make a ticking noise too. However, honestly, these things are terrifying in Upper Complex because you're in this like really enclosed space where you have only a couple of seconds to shoot them. So if you don't have a good enough shield or you don't have good enough kit, they will take you down and there is nothing you can do about it. They're kind of terrifying if they get the jump on you. More often than not, you will just like take huge hits from them if you're not aware, or they get in on you, and they can be pretty scary too. The only issue they have is that they're a little bit inconsistent, so like their AI is a little bit weird, because if you sneak up on them, they just sort of sit there and chill. It's how I got my most popular video on the channel, so that's pretty cool. But yeah. Now then, onto the negatives of this mode. The real problems I have with Night March are really part of the positives. Whilst it encourages stealth, it also encourages stealth. It really just encourages ratting for most of the game, and then third-partying people when they're fighting stuff. Now, whilst that can be really fun, and I've had some immensely enjoyable battles, I do also feel like it kind of just doesn't feel 100% great. Because let's be real, like when you're just playing the game and you get jumped by a team who's in the dark, who are running all dark side optics and thermal weapons and all this sort of gear, you're kind of going to sit down and just like be like, yeah, that didn't feel nice. Like it doesn't feel good to lose to, right? Not me attacking the game, it's not me attacking anyone, but it just doesn't feel as satisfying to lose to. Like I love Marathon, right? Because you have these crazy wild battles where you have like your team battling it out against these guys, and it's all about trying to secure the high ground and secure these good objectives, get good flanks, and it's a lot of skill involved there, right? Like you can't just rush headlong in and expect it to go well. On Night March, it's sort of different because you just have all these close quarters weapons, so everyone's running close quarters gear, and it really forces change in playstyle. Additionally, though, I think it's the other thing is it sort of traps people because a lot of people don't want to really directly engage, and a lot of people don't really want to push enemies or don't really want to attack hostiles. And so it's like you have people trying to play snipers and all this sort of other kit, and they don't have the actual gear that they require, so they sort of just get wiped out. It does get a bit frustrating after a bit of time. Now, that being said, though, overall, I do like the map. I do like how it's designed. I do like how it plays. But it has led to some problems in the loot economy. This is indicative of other things as well, such as loot rooms being massively buffed. So basically what happened was Bungie came out and said effectively, this does not reflect what we had in our test servers, basically. What it means is, in a nutshell, their servers were not giving them as high drops. So they'd test out these weapons, they'd test out these items and see how it all works. And the items and stuff they got were not as high rarity as the stuff we're getting. So basically what they've done is a universal nerf. However, what this has also led to is a lot of people just rapidly running through the cradle, which has meant that, a lot of these hardcore players who are able to do these rooms and do these raids very consistently are now head and shoulders above everyone because they have all this incredible kit, and they also have access to all these extra items and buffs that come from Cradle. And that means that it does get a bit frustrating trying to play people who are just able to revive in a much faster time than you can, and able to outrun you and outlast you in a lot of areas, and able to just do a lot of stuff. It does get frustrating after a while. However, there are other problems, but we will get to those in time. Next big thing that they've added was 2 new guns, KKV and the Battle Pistol. Now, the KKV was supposed to be a counter to Misria, and it just hasn't been accounted as a Mizria. The reason for this is basically bubble shields exist, so you just drop a bubble shield, and the KKV, which has slightly better range than the Mizzy, doesn't really have the time to react to do the high level burst damage that it needs to take down a person who's carrying a Mizzy. It's just really problematic, and it doesn't really fix a lot of things, and it's not a bad gun, but it's like, the way I describe it is, it's basically at close quarters, it's a better Copperhead SMG. At longer ranges, it's a worse Copperhead SMG. So it really just comes down to how you want to play the game. But it's a really good gun on Night Marsh. Not so great on a lot of other maps because it just doesn't strip shields fast enough. So the Mizzy meta sort of just remains, unfortunately. But then we have the Battle Pistol, which has really just, yeah, the Battle Pistol's a thing now. It's really powerful. It will strip basically anyone and everything of their shields, will to live, and pretty much everything else, and loot. It's a really good gun. It's obscenely strong. Like, if you want a good kit, just basically take, like, two stacks of each healing item. So, like, basically two regular heals, 2 shield charge, 2 stacks of shield charge, and then just take yourself a battle pistol and a bunch of ammo, and you'll be fine. It's really strong. It is obscenely powerful. It can strip blue shields, it can strip green shields, it can strip purple shields. It's just really good all around. It's a really powerful weapon, and I honestly, like, I kind of like it. It kind of slaps, and it has found its way into the meta, which is really nice. It's actually good that it's found its way into the meta, because I'm glad one of the weapons has really changed stuff up. Now, that obviously being said, it is a bit of a troublesome weapon, so it might end up getting a nerf at some point, which I'm slightly worried about, because this season's been, like I don't want the bully to go back into the meta, man. I really don't want it back in the meta. But overall, it's a good gun. It's pretty fun to use, and yeah. There is one other change that they've made to the guns, which is the Magnum, which is now actually obscenely fun to use, and I love the Magnum. The Magnum is just my beloved right now. Basically, what it does is 3 headshots will crack a purple shield. This is 3 headshots with, get this, a grey Magnum. You can just go and sponsor kit, and you'll just crack shields like regularly and consistently. It is obscenely good. It's such a good gun now, and I'm just so glad Bungie reworked it, because, like, I really wish, because it always just felt like a wet sponge for most of the last season, so I'm glad that they've done it. Like, it feels good now. It feels like it's a satisfying weapon to use, which I'm really, really happy about. But yeah, that's good. Now, new shell. So basically, there's a new shell being in the town. It's Sentinel. Sentinel is basically your anti-grenade spam class that comes with a heartbeat sensor / motion tracker thing, and of course, a snare mine. Basically what this does is it slows people down. Now, snare mines aren't really that great overall. I just haven't really found that to really be too troublesome playing against, or really too troublesome to the other teams. Because basically you just carry any degree of mechanics kits and you're fine. You don't have any issues. However, that being said, it's an interesting item, and it gives you basically a free update when there's an enemy team around. So I mean that helps. But Sentinel is overall an interesting class. Now, Sentinel isn't overpowered and is definitely by no means the most powerful class. And I reckon he could use some buffs, but at the same time, it's one of those things, right? Like, you don't want to turn him into basically Recon 2.0 with the motion tracker, and you don't really want to turn him into this guy who just, like, stops people from playing the game because his defense is so good. So it sort of is a bit of a weird one. A lot of people seem to think the real buff he should have is just basically to the cooldown times on his abilities, which honestly I think would be pretty decent overall. But yeah. Now then, onto the problems, the really big issues that are plaguing Season 2. Now, Season 2 has a lot of issues that I think we really have to address. Now, first and foremost, I'm just going to get this out of the road. I'm very happy with the content. Like, overall, I don't think the content's too bad, but there are some things that are really starting to sort of rear their ugly heads. Now, first and foremost, the meta has just not really changed. Like, yeah, sure, the battle pistol's in, and the battle pistol's a cool gun. It's pretty fun to use. It's pretty powerful overall. But that also being said, it's just not really that insane, nor is it really that big of a deal. Because you go into Cryo Archive and a lot of these other maps, people are still running Mizzies. And the Mizzy meta just hasn't really changed at all. It's just really strong, and Bungie just doesn't know how to balance its gun, I guess. Because basically what they did last season was they tried to rework it, so the gold ability basically gives it optional fire rate, right? So basically you have a gun that has either, if you're aiming down sights, increased range and a bit of extra accuracy, or if you're holding it in hip firing, you basically get full auto gun. Now, to counteract these changes, Bungie then decided to increase the magazine size. So what that means, fairly simply, is they nerfed the gold gun that 1% of players are dealing with, and then they buffed the weapon that 99% of players are actually going to be dealing with all the time. In other words, the Mizria is just stronger in the baseline form, and the gold form doesn't really have a significant enough change to really nerf it. So basically, in a lot of ways, actually just made it better. Because now it's got two alternative fire modes, one of which actually just objectively destroys the concept of the KKV, because it adds like an extra 15 meters to its range. The KKV is a very short range gun, and the Mizzy already has a solid amount of range all up, which just really is ridiculous at this point. This means that basically, unfortunately, because the meta hasn't changed, a lot of people just aren't really too interested overall, because like you don't want to play against the same items every map and every game, which kind of just sucks, obviously, because like you don't want to play against the same thing all the time. Now, other problems that have emerged are a lot of server-based issues. Now, I'm not sure what's been happening, but this really started to get bad, especially before the wipe, and it's gotten really bad since. So first and foremost, servers have been having a lot of rubber banding, a lot of desync, and there's a lot of issues with bullet magnetism. Certain bullets like hitting walls now for some reason, rather than actually hitting the enemies that your scope is perfectly on. And of course, there are other little problems such as just, trying to use things like ladders is generally a surefire way to teleport back in time. And yeah, it's just really not great. There are a lot of problems. Now, it's not all the time, and usually it's fairly manageable, but at the same time, it's starting to feel really problematic. It's starting to feel like it's not really going that great, and I do have some problems with it. And I do think it is starting to get really difficult to ignore at this point. Now, is it unplayable? No. But when you lose a few matches, and as Scarrow said in one of his videos, you shouldn't be losing potentially hours of effort because of some desync, right? It's not good, right? This can mean the difference between you dying or not dying. I've had a bunch of matches where I've got really good hauls, and then I go to melee a bot, the bot teleports behind me, and then just starts shooting me and strips my shield in half a second. Or it fires a burst of ammo, and then for some reason the desync happens, and basically just triples its damage, and I just die, which is ridiculous. It happens really often now, so I'm quite worried about that. Now, the next big issue is, of course, matchmaking, which is just sort of really busted right now. Grey Shield people are getting into lobbies with full purple and gold kits. Level 100s, and I have seen this, have been going against level 20s, and it's just really all over the place. And of course, if you live in certain areas, you can't even get matches. Now, that would be fine if, the aforementioned things would be fine if, it's for instance, here in Australia, where you can't really get consistent matches. So I'd happily go into a team with gold or purple kits with a blue or green kit, right? I wouldn't mind that too much, as long as I get to play the game. But here in Australia, especially, it's really hard to play the game. It's really difficult and frustrating. And also, the matchmaking and everything's just really weird right now, and it's not really working too great. Wait times are very long, which is also deterring a lot of people, because, this thing, if people can't play the game, they're not going to want to play the game. And I have seen people say, oh, well, why don't you just, take a break or stop playing the game for a bit? And the problem is, that's what's happening, unfortunately. A lot of people are doing that. And a lot of people are putting this hope into Season 3 that it'll be fixed by then. But I really feel like if we don't put out enough things and we don't say enough, Bungie's not going to address it. And I really have this fear that Bungie might actually let this just slide and think, oh, this is fine because, next season will be fixed because we have more players. When if you don't fix it now, next season you may not have more players. You might have even less than what you have now. And that's a problem. And that's a big issue. And I really feel like this one needs to be the maintenance season, right? This is the season that needs to break down all the bugs, fix them, solve the problems, solve the issues, solve the things that suck in the game, and make it really good. That's what this season needs to be, right? It needs to be the season that does all the things right and keeps things interesting. And then finally, we just sort of just have the question of like, is this enough content? Now, this is something that kind of annoys a lot of people because there hasn't really been much done on other maps. Whilst, yeah, there's some slight changes to perimeters, there's more things happening, and yes, there's better new items in the game, the reality is nothing's really changed in Cryo Archive, and nothing's really changed on pretty much any of the other maps. Perimeter's the same, there's no real environmental storytelling or evolution of the map, it's pretty much just a beginner map with some new stuff on it. Dire Marsh is Dire Marsh, it marshes and dire. I don't know, but that's really all I've got. And Outpost is the same, except for this time the key rooms are even more inconsistent because Bungie nerfed all of the key rooms in the game, so that creates some big issues. Overall though, I feel like this is just, it's a fairly problematic season. I just don't think there's really enough content to draw people in. Like, I think it's good if somebody's like playing it for the first time. I don't think it's a bad season. But if you're an old player returning to the game, or you've played the game for a bit before, you played Season 1, probably not the best season to join, honestly. Like, Season 2 is just not, like, it's not a bad season, right? Like, I do think, like, as I say, with desync and the networking and the matchmaking, you can still get matches, you can still do things, you can still play the game. And it's not all the time that you're rubber banding. So you don't really, and if you're not playing these super high intensity matches that are, super heavy on your graphics card and the servers and all this stuff, like, you're generally going to get good frames, you're generally going to get good matches with low latency and stuff, but it's just those matches where you have to do a lot of stuff and there's a lot of things happening, it starts to get a bit problematic. But yeah, that's all I really got for now. I just kind of hope these things get fixed. Bungie, if you're listening, if anyone who sees this, can you please just fix these things? Like, I'm not hating on the game, not angry at the game, I just want you guys to do what's good for the game. I want you guys to fix these problems. I could cover the sponsor mode, but it's a sponsor mode. It's basically single player where you rarely get a rook, and you generally get decent loot if you're not getting camped by 3 rocket drones. But yeah, that's all I've really got for now. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if anyone from Bungie sees this, or if anyone has any contacts at Bungie, maybe put these arguments through and put these things through to them so maybe they know, and if you have these problems, right, maybe make posts, make your own videos, say this sort of stuff, because, like, feedback is how we help this game, right? Feedback is how we help Marathon, and hiding away from the problems never fixes anything. But that's all I got for now. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you very much. Goodbye.